2017 year. I was just switching over to all fruit was just so easy. You can start building that body after you've gotten over the hump of metabolic change. With men, we don't have periods. So it's almost like sometimes the ejaculation can serve as another channel of elimination for toxins, and you can control the lovemaking experience because you don't have such a irritating itch to release your ejaculation.
Is your partner, the mother of your child, also on a similar diet, and has been your fertility journey for the two of you? Hi, and welcome to this new episode of The Lightleaders. Today I'm with Jordan Ra. And Jordan, you've been, I think, something like 9 years on a frugivore diet. And through the diet, you kept building muscle. You've just become a dad. And so we'll talk about fertility. We'll talk about masculinity on a frugivore and raw vegan diet, because we know there's a lot of misconceptions that as a man on that diet, you'll become weak or you'll have problems with fertility or all these deficiencies. And you're here, like many others, actually, to prove that it's not necessarily the case. So I'm excited to have a conversation with you today. I'd love to start with a very simple question, which is, Jordan, what are you grateful for today?
Thank you for that question, Alex. I'm so grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my wife and child. And I'm really grateful for just the opportunity to hopefully, share a little bit of wisdom and just a little bit of my personal story. Um, Grateful for the opportunity to make a positive impact. It's always happening.
Thank you so much, Jordan, and grateful to have you today. I'd love to dive into very concretely, how do you eat today?
Yeah, man, sure. Today, I'm pretty much about, if you want to do percentages, maybe like 90% raw living foods. And 90% of that is fruits. I actually recently just came off like a strict, more like 2 weeks of just 100% raw foods, mostly fruits, but I'm really appreciating my salads and certain sprouts now. It's like winter time here in America. And so, yeah, but today I actually had some cooked food. Like we broke fast for my birthday yesterday. And today was Valentine's Day. So we had our favorite type of cooked food, which was Ethiopian cuisine. Um, and so, yeah, I would say it's like 90% fruits and raw foods with a little bit of like African food and Asian food, like here and there. But
Mm,
that, it's all plants. I've been fully plant-based now for 9 years.
amazing. And actually, grateful for people like you paving the way. I'm actually eating kind of the same for the past 4 years. And I've also looked at your Instagram journey, and it's been some of the inspiration as a young man to see, like, okay, I can eat this way and keep my testosterone and my masculinity and my muscle building and my fertility. Exactly. So that's really cool. And so 9 years plant-based, were you also mainly raw from the beginning, or have you changed that more
Yeah.
recently?
Yeah, actually, I've pretty much was fortunate to dive deeply very quickly and kind of attract amazing teachers along my journey. So literally maybe a few days after I decided to go 100% vegan overnight, as they call it, I ended up meeting a fruitarian who had been like on a fruit path for like 4 years at the time. And he was an older guy, been vegan for like 20 years. So fruit was where he was at in the journey. And that kind of blew my mind and planted a seed, pun intended, about like, okay, I'm just starting this plant diet thing, but there's other levels to this. And like, you can actually just eat fruit if that's what you want to do, and all the nutrients are there. So I knew from the beginning that there was no one size fit all for the vegan lifestyle. A lot of people come in and think there's like restriction and stuff, but I'm like, no, I can eat like junk food. Like I can eat whatever I want. I just don't have to eat animals. So that was my perspective, and my introduction was like, it was kind of a liberation thing. I get to liberate the animals from their suffering of being eaten, and I liberate myself from having to eat them. Like, I don't have to eat animals. I can if I want to, but it's actually okay. Nutritionally, it's okay to not eat them. And from an ethical standpoint, an environmental standpoint, you even should not eat them. So that was my journey. Yeah, been so very quickly got into like a fruit feasting and detoxification using fruits. And I did spend like a good, 9, 10 months eating like processed, just whatever I could eat, whatever I could get access to, canned foods, eating out, just discovering and exploring what it's like to eat a plant diet. That's totally fine for me. I was right out of college, or in college at the time. But after I did that first like 30-day fruit cleanse, which I made it like 21 days, and I was like, yo, this is great. And but I went back to eating other foods, just to have that variety or whatever reasons we use to go back and forth, right? But then I was like, I saw people cleansing online, and I saw how much fruit they were eating. And so I was like, I gotta do that again. I gotta go back. I remember how amazing I felt eating fruits. Mind you, I was just on my own journey. Like, it wasn't a popular thing. There was no trendiness online. So there was no pressure to like be vegan, be fruit, or be meat. I was like having an internal journey where I would share a little bit online here and there, but people didn't really understand.
Mm.
So I just kind of did my own way. I will say, for my second fruit cleanse, I was way more mentally prepared because I had done one before. And so for that first one, I did like cold turkey, from straight from vegan, like fried tofu and stuff, to like fruit overnight, just because I got that inspiration. Second
When
time, I
was
had
that?
like, that was like, let's say October of 2016. So I went vegan January 1, 2016. And then like 10 months down the line, I went straight
Mm.
into a fruit cleanse. Right. And that was cool. That was where I was at in the journey. If I could recommend to help people, like, I probably wouldn't do that. I'd recommend the second time how I did it, which was I did more of a transitional, like mostly raw, like raw till four, right? So I ate raw foods all day, and then I had like some cooked foods for dinner, and then did that for a few weeks, transition into more fruit all day, and then salads for dinner. So by the time March came around of the 2017 year, I was just switching over to all fruit was just so easy, and I had way more knowledge as well of like just how to combine fruit. And so that goes to say, you will acquire more knowledge along the way if you're passionate about it. Just start with where you are and start with what you know, and let the rest come to you, because that's what happened for me.
Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, I love that. And there's pros and cons to both. Actually, I did on this channel a kind of debate between Professor Spira, who's more into transition, and Lorraine Lockman, who has a water fasting center, and it's often like more like, no, go to the right diet straight away. And they both have their pros and cons. I've done it more softly than you. I think 7 years ago I started being mainly vegan, and then 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, strictly very more strictly vegan, and 4 years ago high raw, high fruit, and going this way. But it can be good also to have that glimpse, like, okay, whoa, I did a week or 2 weeks on fruits, and then you planted that seed, as you said. So
I do.
that's really cool. I'd love to ask you. So that's 9-year journey. So that's a lot of experience on this, because when you start something like this, a lot of people tell you, oh, you're going to feel great for 6 months. I have my buddy XYZ, he did 6 months, and then he started having deficiencies, and then he started to lose all the muscle. In 3 months, you'll be like changing, it's just a fad and all that. So I'd love to ask you, especially on that topic, has it been for your strengths and muscle building as a man during 9 years on this diet?
Dude, it sucks, man. It really sucks how no one tells you you can keep getting stronger when you stop eating meat. Like, no one tells you that. And dude, I've just constantly gotten stronger and stronger. Obviously, it's less about the diet because there's weak people who eat meat. And like, I think the world's strongest man in his weight category is actually a vegan, right? So there's not like it's about the movement when it comes to getting stronger and muscle and strength for sure. But on a vegan diet, my energy levels have gone up so much that I have the opportunity to be physically active way more than when
Mm.
I was eating meat personally. When I was a meat eater, I had a lot of physical responsibilities. I was in the marching band my entire life for about from sixth grade, so like 11 years old, all the way through college. So we're talking 10, 15 years of like high physical activity, being outside, marching around your neighborhood, marching up and down the football fields, holding an instrument, playing, breathing, all that stuff, right? In the 100-degree Mississippi heat. So I had some physical demands. I played tennis a little bit in high school too, played football and basketball in the neighborhood. So I was no stranger to movement. But when I started eating a plant diet, and especially when I started eating high fruit or only fruit for times, I had so much energy that I essentially had to find new ways to move my body in order to use the energy so that I could like go to sleep at night tired and not just like force myself to lay there with all this energy. Because let's just face it, the modern day lifestyle is way more sedentary than even 100-year ago human beings. Like we had to move a whole lot more 100 years ago just to get things done. You know, not everyone had a car. Like a lot of people worked in gardens or worked physical jobs. We didn't have so much automation. So I think it's fine that basically once you start eating plants, you'll have a bunch of energy, and people like to think it's a problem. But honestly, I'm a lot more productive on my plant diet. So to answer your question, I'm the strongest I've ever been in my life at 31 years old now. And I won't say it's because I'm eating plants or because I'm not eating plants, but I do feel like longevity wise, my internal organs are having a much better time at, because of the way I'm fueling myself, that
Mm.
I'll be able to continue training as hard as I do or continue being fit with as little training as I do because eating fruit is just the cleanest fuel. And
Yeah,
anyone
thank
who's
you for
eating fruit will
sharing.
experience that. Anyone who eats fruits will experience that, but you'll just be able to go hard in the gym. And if you're not able
Mm.
to go hard, you're probably not eating enough. Or you just transition
Mm.
into too rapidly.
Thank you, Jordan. Yeah, it's been my experience also in terms of energy level that this diet is really good for high levels of energy. And of course, that can translate into doing more activities and through that, getting stronger, building more muscle. I want to echo the amounts that you need to eat because when you eat fruits, it's a lot of water also, right? So you need to eat quite big quantities. And I feel a lot of people struggle to eat enough calories when they eat a lot of fruits, especially if you go into the watermelons and these kind of fruits, right? If you do
Yeah.
banana and dates shakes, it might be much easier.
Yeah.
um, my experience has been definitely building muscle on fruits like a year and a half ago. I did a 2 week water fast, and so then I lost a lot of weight and I've regained quite a lot of that diet. So that was a good kind of test for myself. And at the same time, I feel probably if I was eating certain ways, or also obviously taking some certain kind of drugs like steroids in some extreme cases, I would probably be much more bulky. So to me, it's like finding that balance where I feel as a young man on that diet, I want to be strong, I want to look good, and at the same time, if I was obsessed with bodybuilding, I don't think that's the right diet because it's quite a natural diet, and so I think it gives quite a natural physique, and that a lot of people who are overly bulky is usually a not very natural way to build that. So yeah, that's why it's been interesting because I've had a lot of those conversations with building muscle on fruit. And to me, the goal is to be at our highest potential. And then through that, fruits and raw vegan, the risk for especially a young man is like, oh, I'm going to be weak, I'm going to look like skinny. And so, how do we avoid that also while reaping all the other benefits? So, is that also something you align with?
What's the real question? I get everything you're saying, but what's the question?
Like, would you recommend a raw vegan diet to build muscle, or do you feel it's more a diet that you choose for other reasons? And on top of it, it's totally possible to have a good physique and strength on that diet.
Yeah, I basically agree with the last thing you said. It's like, okay, because I have some experience with like some of my clients who literally have a need to detox. So I recommend the raw diet for healing, right? Like if you need to heal or if you really don't feel good, I recommend eating raw foods to feel better. And through feeling better, all of your goals are more attainable, right?
Mm,
So feeling better, raw foods. If the goal is to like objectively or arbitrarily kind of just win a competition, and this competition has certain like basically bodybuilding world is about aesthetics. It's not even about performance.
mm, yeah,
So if we were talking powerlifting, I would actually say plants. But if we're
mm,
talking looking like designing, like reverse engineering an aesthetic body, a body that looks a certain way to get certain points, the
yeah,
quickest route might be whatever your coach recommends based off where you're at. They might
mm,
recommend meat, they might recommend all kinds of things. But I've coached someone who basically needed to be detoxing and healing. And so that needs to happen ASAP. But then they need to win a competition, and that has a time limit as well, right? They have a bodybuilding competition, physique.
mm,
So with them, there's a modified approach, based off where they're at. So when you detox very rapidly, then the body is going to change very rapidly because you shock the system through abrupt changes. Now, if you can afford to delay your healing process, which is actually recommended if you're not in a life or death situation, it's like you took 30 years to get sick. Why try to fix it in 30 days? Take 2 years to really set a benchmark of I need this
mm,
disease gone or I need this certain weight goal or something like that, right? Like set it far out so that you can have a comfortable, sustainable journey to get there. Even if you want to get into bodybuilding, who says you need to start this year? I recommend doing a detox or just eating raw foods or transitioning to a raw diet over the course of a year or two to let your metabolism adjust to the new way that you're eating. And then you can start calculating your macros
mm,
and start building a body that you want it to look a certain way. You can start building that body after you've gotten over the hump of metabolic change because you're going to
mm,
lose fat. You're going to change water content. Your salt content is going to fluctuate. Your calorie source is fluctuating from starch based to fruit based, it's a different source of energy, water based foods to dry earth based foods, and then we get into like how much liquid water are you drinking, because if you eat more water, then you don't need to drink as much water. And maybe that's why a lot of fruit people undereat on fruit, is because just habitually they just drink too much water, which doesn't allow room for them to eat the water, and they'd rather eat foods that are denser. So it's this thing where when you, what I've noticed is when you eat unnatural foods, they never balance out. So when you eat cooked foods, you get this really dense, satiating feeling, but then you have to hydrate a whole lot with water. And then through that dilution of your minerals, because you drink water, you then need to eat super dense foods because you put yourself back in a deficit. You're never really getting exactly what you need. Like a piece of fruit has the hydration and the salts of the minerals and the vitamins all at once. It's food and water in one thing. So when you're able to eat your water, or when you're able to drink, when you're able to drink your minerals through eating water, then you don't have to go and drastically dehydrate yourself and then drastically rehydrate yourself which both things have they're like suboptimal. Like foods that have been cooked and denatured and dried, they're so extremely dry, you gotta rehydrate them. And then the water that you use is so impure because we're not meant to have to drink so much water to balance out having eating so much solid foods. And it's just something you just start to notice when you eat watery foods. It's like, oh, I don't drink water. So that's the water drinking thing is a super interesting concept. And I basically think people have to be conscious about phasing out the water as they phase in watery foods and really just
Mm.
crowding out cooked foods. Like it may not even be helpful to think about eliminating certain foods because you get into this psychological thing. Just bump up the things that are actually satisfy your needs. So that would be fruits. They have enzymes, vitamins, minerals, sunlight, water, flavor, sugar. There's even sugarless fruits. Like fruits actually fit every category. So people think that fruit's only sweet, but there's protein rich fruits like avocado and coconut meat and ackee and olives and certain seeds. These are all protein based fruits that have no sweetness. There's
Yeah,
sugary
they're quite
fruits.
quite mainly fat, right? Or protein too, you'd say.
They're
I'd say
mainly
fat.
fat. They're mainly fat, exactly. But typically, you find fat and protein typically are combined in the same foods. But those foods typically are low in water because they say oil and water don't mix. So there's not many foods that will have both. But avocado is high in water and high in fat and high in protein, amino acids.
Yeah, interesting. And there's kind of those two schools, right? In the frugivore and raw vegan movement, there's some people which is eat your water, and there's some people that still recommend to drink the water on top. And so, yeah, I guess then you can feel into your body. I think it might depend also on how long you've been doing it. So one guy I've been following, Lauren Lockman, for example, he advises to keep drinking the water because we have also those years of accumulation, and maybe at some point really naturally you really don't feel drawn to drinking water, and listening to your body also is very important in those cases. I'd love to also so we talked quite a bit about performance for for everyone, and including men, and muscle building. I'd love to also talk about fertility. So you obviously just became a dad. There is a bit that conception that on this diet you may have deficiencies for men and for women, actually, almost maybe more for women. I hear a lot that, oh, you need meat for women, especially when you want to procreate. So I'd love to ask you, well, is your partner, the mother of your child, also on a similar diet, and has been your fertility journey for the two of you?
Yeah, actually, she is on pretty much the same exact lifestyle and diet as me. For around the same time, like before we met each other, she was on her own. She actually might have even had like a vegetarian journey like before me, so maybe closer to 10 years where she's been cutting out animal products, right? But we've been fully plant-based. Her entire pregnancy was all plant-based. I think she tried like an egg or something or a piece of fish, but it didn't make it past one meal, you know? Um, because we have to try these things, especially with such a primal experience of motherhood and childbirth, right? But for her, it's been all fruits. I mean, her first trimester, she literally like mono ate granadilla. It's like the only thing that she wanted to eat, just literally. But that also came with no morning sickness, no pains, like, so her experience was totally like really blissful in terms of the pregnancy. And yeah, she had some density cravings, so we had more cooked foods. Even those are very simple. But this is because we did the work literally 6, 7, 8 years before, where the body literally has been recalibrated more towards natural foods. So yeah, it's really a journey, and we all have to honor each other where we are. In terms of fertility, like conception was not a difficult task for us. It came very naturally. We have a very healthy, thriving sexual relationship, our energy levels, and even before conception, we were very intuitively cleansing and fasting and preparing our bodies and working out and exercising. You can kind of see some of that stuff on my Instagram and YouTube, like very consistently being super active. Yeah, like it's just really interesting. I feel like maybe there was maybe some marketing done or anti-marketing against plant foods when it comes to masculinity and energy. But it's been my experience that a lot of men nowadays are younger and younger experiencing erectile dysfunction, like ED, just like not being able to satisfy their women. Um, People who have these problems are not vegans. The people who take Viagra and take all sorts of other enhancements are not vegan or not fruit eaters. And I even have a story. It's actually a testimonial in my Facebook page where I fed a guy some raw foods just for 1 week. He wasn't even fully raw. He's just having some of my raw meals that I was prepping for him. And one day he was like, "Yeah, Jordan, like uh last night, like I had an erection like in the middle of the night and I had to like that was great, you know." And he was like, "Yeah, and I had to pee as well in the middle of the night." And it wasn't because we drank a bunch of water, like literally just the raw foods actually stimulate, like gave him so much more energy that he had noticeably more erections in his sleep. And he actually needed to take a bowel movement. Like he had to pee in the middle of the night just because he was so hydrated from dinner. So obviously that's not something that will just always be that way because you're eventually just going to stabilize and stable out. What I've noticed is that my sex drive, when I'm on plant foods, it's like I have higher sex drive, but it's also I have less of a need to express it. Whereas like when I'm eating animal foods, it's like I have more of a primal, like I have a more of a lustful energy, and yet at the same time I'm less able to perform when it comes time to do that. Like it's it's more inconsistent. So I feel like it's more of that animal desire on a meat based diet, and even on a cooked food diet. Someone presented this concept once, and I don't know how true it is, but it just resonated, it made sense with me. And I noticed this that essentially women have an extra channel of elimination. They have a monthly cycle where their body releases extra toxins through their uterus to keep the womb space pure and always prepared to carry a child. So even unhealthy women, their body's going to do what it can each month to try to keep them healthy. And that's why they have painful periods because they have more toxins to release. The cleaner you get, the more easeful your period because there's less waste to get rid of. The womb is always more prepared to have a baby. With men, we don't have periods. So it's almost like sometimes the ejaculation can serve as another channel of elimination for toxins. It's almost like when you eat a more dirty diet, and obviously you're not going to vomit the toxins, and unless you can sweat out all the toxins, the energy also goes down into your more lower chakras. And the only way to scratch that itch, and not the itch of sexuality, but the itch of toxins and inflammation and acids, the only way to scratch that itch, aside from your blocked colon, is to actually blow off some steam and have an ejaculation. And so you're able to release acids and poisons and lymphatic waste through the ejaculation. So I think that's where that primal sort of carnal sort of lust comes from on a meat diet or even a cooked diet. Whereas on a fruit diet, you just have access to the energy whenever you need it. And it's easier to flow because you're hydrated. It's easier to like move that energy up into mental creation or move that energy towards the heart space for heartfelt conversations and just empathizing. And then when it's time to move that energy down and have like beautiful lovemaking, you can do that and you can control the lovemaking experience because you don't have such a irritating itch to release your ejaculation. You can just flow with the energy. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Mm. The fruitarian tantric path. I love it. It's really
That
interesting
is,
perspective on this also, Jordan. And yeah, it's also it was, I think, in the documentary The Game Changers, where they made people two different burritos, one with the beans and one with the meat, and they had more erections when they were with the beans. And at the same time, I know some and like anecdotes that go in the different direction. There's a guy called Tim Schiff, maybe you were following him. He was a parkour vegan guy, and he said, oh, he had a bite of salmon and all of a sudden had a wet dream. So potentially people's experience can be a little bit different on that, but it's good to have examples like you, like also your wife. And to me, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think there's a lot of fear also around the deficiencies around this that often isn't justified. It's almost like if you have a health problem and you eat in the quote unquote normal way, which isn't really normal in my opinion, people aren't questioning your diet. They're like, oh, you have a problem with fertility. Yeah, it's common. Take that pill. Oh, you have this and that. Okay, that's the remedy. But if you go to your doctor and you have the same problem and you say you're vegan, they're going to be, oh, that's why. All of a sudden, that's the reason why you have all these problems. So all the non-vegans that have these problems has nothing to do with diet. But if you're vegan and you have that problem, it's definitely your diet. That's often how people interpret it, I feel.
yeah,
And of course, it's not because you're vegan or even if you're mainly raw vegan that you'll never have any problem. But it doesn't mean that all your problems are to be attributed to that. Yeah, I wanted to
exactly.
echo on this. Yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely get into those little almost conspiracy or agenda to keep
Yeah.
people away from eating plants. Like why does it bother people that some people don't want to eat animals? Like, why is that really such a huge problem? Once again, vegans are not costing the health companies or the health insurance industry a lot of extra money. Vegans are not costing taxpayers extra money. There should be outrage about heart disease because that burden of untimely deaths and diabetes and cancers and strokes and heart disease, that burden falls on American taxpayers. I know it's different possibly in certain European countries, but you get what I'm saying? Like, the burden of being unhealthy actually falls on everyone. And the some people's personal choice to be vegan or eat plants or fruits doesn't negatively impact the greater society. It only negatively impacts companies that benefit from keeping us sick. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But you can really look into that. It's a very interesting thing to be really upset about, that people just want to stop eating cows
It's
or stop
really
cooking their food.
interesting. It's really interesting that picture also to look at, for example, in the more, let's say, carnivore movement, there will be actually a lot of similarities. There will be a lot of things around, I don't know, fluoride in the water, or maybe there'll be like not for the job. And so there's going to be a lot of similarities where it's like processed food is bad. And so a lot of commonalities, probably more than between the raw foodies and the standard American diet follower. But
Yeah,
then it's like almost a turn where it becomes, I think in their mind, the vegan thing is also an agenda to weaken men. I've seen that kind of message, and like Joe Rogan and this type of people that I will have a lot in common with on many topics. On that topic, it's going to be like, yeah, the vegan agenda is pushed to weaken the man, and that's actually the agenda. It's part of the agenda, and that's yeah,
talk
that's
about
just
that.
an interesting point of view, and I think it's a slightly different view of masculinity. I actually did an episode with another raw vegan where I called one of the clips "Protectors, Not Predators." And it's like that vision of the alpha male, which ultimately is like, what's alpha male to you? Like, what do you want to be? Do you want to be top of the competition and you can bully others and you're the best, Or do you want to be that compassionate alpha where like you're working on yourself and you're strong and you're doing all the things, but ultimately you feel more that your strength gives you a role of stewardship rather than the one of a predator where you want to create more compassion and peace, and that's your view of it. And I'm not saying that people who eat this way are necessarily, predators, but in how they eat, they are acting like this as a
Yeah,
fact. And then I do believe that way that is going to translate somehow in your ways to be also in the world.
I totally agree, man. It is very interesting. Here's the thing. I feel like there's a greater agenda aside from which side of vegan or plant or carnivore, whatever that you're on. There's a greater agenda to keep humans fighting over things that don't matter. Or just there's a greater agenda to keep us distracted by having enemies. When the thing that a carnivore and a vegan have in common is that they do genuinely want to be healthier, I think. Maybe genuinely. Um what happens is we have these algorithms and these platforms that benefit off of more noise, more conversations, more sensationalized perspectives, right? And I just think in general, American society, Western society, already has this undertone of competition and ego and bullying, essentially, as a culture, to where it doesn't matter what lens you put it through, whether it's your religion versus my religion, your diet versus my diet, your politician versus my politician, your gender versus my gender, your race versus my race, your sport versus my sport, right? We can't even appreciate martial arts because we got to figure out which one's better than the other, right? So there's that sort of divide and conquer agenda over preceding all of these conversations, right? So if we can be more aware of that, then we can actually start to use our differences to our advantage. Because at the end of the day, I'm not going to eat a carnivore diet right now. So how can I use my carnivore brother's experience to benefit my knowledge and my experience? But instead, I need him to be wrong and I need me to be right. And then he needs me to be wrong and he needs himself to be right. And as long as that's the goal, that's what the definition of an argument is both sides trying to prove each other wrong and to trying to prove why themselves is right. That's not a journey toward truth. That's an ego battle. That's a penis fight, poking each other, right? As opposed to how can I use the fact that my brother has different experiences? How can my different experiences benefit his blind spots? How can his different experiences benefit my blind spots so that we can co-create a more holistic view of the true issue, which is we're both trying new diets because the original one we were on was not healthy. That's what we have in common, right? So how can we both like
Yeah.
expound upon being fully informed? Because personally, that's what I've done. Like that's my personal choice. Even though I eat a fruitarian based diet, I've done enough research on the carnivore thing to know that if I didn't want to eat fruit and I had to eat animal products, I've learned from the carnivores what the best option would be in that category, right? Or even as a fruit-based person, I can coach someone who absolutely needs to eat meat, and I can still understand the best way for them to eat their diet, even if it's not like mine, because I have a holistic understanding of how the body works and how it will adapt and how it will respond to certain things. So for me, discovering fruitarianism wasn't about finding the thing that makes me better than other people. It was finding the thing that makes people better.
Mm.
I'll say that again.
Yeah, I love. Yeah.
My fruit journey was not about finding the diet that makes me better than other people. It was about finding the thing that makes us all better. And so I think if a carnivore is also looking at his diet or his journey as a similar journey of him really saying, okay, it's not about me, but how am I improving everyone's life? Then we'll continue to arrive at some really, really beautiful conclusions, and we'll continue to uncover some amazing truth together as humans on this journey of becoming our greatest versions.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jordan. And I love that way of thinking. Actually, sometimes, especially when I can feel my mind going more into the ego, I like to ask myself, what if I was God? Which I believe ultimately we are. We are not separate from God. But what if I was the God of this reality? And instead of playing this game just as this human, it's like, and then you think of it like thinking what's the greatest good for everyone rather than just your own. And it might as well be things like growing your own business or doing what you can in that moment with your human self. But playing, thinking this way, almost if you like a video game analogy, as a child I would play Sim City and you're trying to grow the city, right? And so thinking in that way, okay, what's the best move I can do, not just for me and my ego, but for like as the player
But
of this world.
yeah, and for any player and for any new player that joins in, how can they also be having the best experience? How can I eliminate the number of losing paths that there are in this game? Because how do I think more win-win? How do I create more win-win scenarios for every entity that becomes
Yeah.
involved in this?
Yeah. So it's almost like for me, I look at, okay, I have this lifetime. How is my universe, this universe that I see in front of me, how am I going to live it when I transition, right? And so if the goal is this, then it's very different than ego driven, because ultimately maybe it's like it's going to be less about fame or about money, but it's going to be about like what I've created without necessarily needing the recognition. Yeah.
Literally, it's all about connection and just realizing you are everything. Everything is you, and you are everything. Like, so I can't harm you without harming myself. I can't help you without helping myself.
Yeah, and it might end up doing big things, you know, it might end up being famous, it might end up being really rich, because it could be that your purpose is also to share a message. So actually, as a parenthesis, that's why I love this podcast, and that's why I've become a podcast coach too, where I help other conscious leaders start their podcast, start their YouTube channel, and share their message and speak their truth, is because being humble or not in the ego doesn't mean playing small. Actually, sometimes it means honoring your God-given gifts, honoring your own divinity, and actually sharing your uniqueness with the world. And it can be, for some of us, especially in that day and age, through a podcast or YouTube channel. So just talking to the viewer right now, and thank you for being here. If you want to speak to me about the possibility of starting your podcast or YouTube channel, check the link in the description, because I'm really passionate about helping other conscious leaders do that, and speak their truth and have important conversation that are enjoyable like this one, but also to share them on social media and ideally steer the the world, the universe in a more conscious, more harmonious way. So I also appreciate having you on this, Jordan, for that purpose. Yeah, and we're also getting closer to the end of our episode today. It's been a real joy, Jordan. It's been a really good conversation. I'd love to ask you, is there anything else that you would like to share with me and our viewer today?
Hmm. Yeah, I would say just two main points that I feel are really important for people to leave with today. One is this idea of I don't need you to change anything for me. Alex doesn't need you to change anything for him. what I propose is really just this episode is an opportunity for each of us to become more aware of who we are, what we truly want, and what impact we truly want to leave on the world. And I think that starts less with your actions, kind of goes back to my vegan story. Like, it was just a decision to not eat animals that was important, not necessarily what I did and how I made it look, but just the shift in consciousness and awareness of like, who do I want to be and what do I want my impact to be? Begin to lead your life just with that vibration intact, right? I think that's going to help us all make more peace with, first of all, who we are personally, and thus it helps us make more peace with those who seem like our enemies. Yeah. And the other thing was what you mentioned about the masculinity thing, and like whether it's protectors or predators. A lot of times there seems to be this agenda of the hyper masculine or the toxic masculine or the alpha masculine. And I think that's really to the detriment of both men and women, because when we just have a one-dimensional view of masculinity, then we're like we're like a cyclops. We only have one eye, and we're not able to get two eyes to look at the same thing with a slightly different perspective, right? So being adaptable and realizing that once you have a woman, once you have a child, you're gonna wish you had more skills than just hitting things and shooting things and banging things and just your ability to protect. You're gonna wish that you actually knew how to nurture and how to be kind and how to, I love this idea. I forget the name for it, but the samurai have this philosophy where they study flower arrangements. And even though they're known as the most stone cold killers of their time, this was not possible without a grand appreciation for the beauty, for the delicate, for the artistic, for the creative. And so really realizing that without one woman and without femininity, there is no masculinity. And without both, you don't get life. And so those energies dance and harmonize within us every day. And sometimes, if the answer isn't banging or smashing another thing, perhaps it's just loving and being a bit more caring in the moment, a bit more empathic, a bit more compassionate, just seeing what that can look like. You'd be surprised at how women might respond to an emotionally intelligent man.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing this, Jordan. And these are beautiful words to close our episode that hopefully was inspiring and empowering to everyone watching. 47 minutes in now, so thank you for still being with us. And actually, I love to read the comments from the people. So what have you learned from that episode? Or maybe you have a different perspective. We'd love to hear in the comment. I read all the comments. I reply to them all. So please share there. And of course, if you want to support, you can find the link of Jordan in the description, and you can like this channel, share it with someone who needs to hear this conversation, and subscribe. And much love to you. And thank you so much, Jordan. Also much love to you.